Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have with me two very special guests. I have Marianna Dean and Zoe Cunningham. How are you both doing this morning, or afternoon, I guess, for you?
Great.
Hi.
Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm so
Really
glad that Beth, got a hold of me and asked me to interview both of you. I'm like, of course I want to. Like, that just sounds incredible. So I'm so excited to talk about your new movie, Breaking Infinity. I'm glad she sent the trailer too. I kind of got stuck in it after a while. I was like kind of analyzing different things as a writer and as somebody that loves film. So I'm so happy that we could have both of you on today to discuss this great product that you have. So.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, of course. Anytime you want, you got another movie or you got something in the works, like you just want to talk about, sci-fi or fantasy, just let me know. We got some seminars coming up that we'll be inviting different people to. So if you're ever, interested in that, we can send an email and connect again. So really excited to get this started for you today, though.
Perfect.
All right. So we'll start with that first one there. Excuse me. What have your experiences been when it comes to filmmaking and the industry itself?
It's such a big question.
I know.
There is so much to say about the film industry. So my background actually is that I'm originally a computer programmer.
Oh, cool.
That was my first job. And so I've got a lot of experience in the technology industry. And then recently, in about 2014, I got into acting and through that into filmmaking.
Oh, cool.
Hence where I am now. So I've got a whole other industry to compare the film industry to. And I have to say, the technology industry makes a lot more sense. I know it can seem crazy from the outside, but compared to the film industry, it is super straightforward.
Oh, that's interesting. And how about you, Marianna?
I have pretty much the similar experience to Zoe. I come from sales and strategy management background.
Oh, wow.
And in 2016, I kind of went into film producing and directing.
Oh, cool.
So I have similar experience to Zoe, whereby corporate world is a lot more organized and a lot more clear rather than the film industry.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but it's funny to me that they both said that because my one experience, like I said before we got recording, I was in a martial arts comedy and I had done the choreography for like 3 months. The guy that was supposed to be originally doing it had to bail, ended up coming back later. So I had already done everything. So then we were both working together and I'm like, okay, whatever. I think he kind of felt like I was stepping on his toes a little bit. But then once we get to the actual filming, they're about to be done. And then they called me up at like 10:30 at night to this warehouse in my hometown. They're like, hey, we need you to come and help. So I went to help and they're like, we actually need you to be the main fight scene. This is what you're going to do. I'm like, holy moly. And then after that, I thought post-production, no problem. It was like a Kickstarter thing. It was literally 6 years later that the movie actually ended up coming out. And it was just so interesting because all the shots that we had figured out, they went with completely different ones in post-production. And I was really let down by it. I was like, wow, spent all this time and energy waiting 6 years. And then, this was the end result. So I definitely feel that the whole process for me was just absolutely tumultuous. So it was pretty crazy.
Right, and post-production can be so different depending on what budget you have. Because we didn't have a huge amount of budget, we kind of had to rely on people's times, availability, and so on. So, there are all these other parameters that kind of play into the game.
Yeah, it gets interesting after
a while. The thing that's really interesting about filmmaking is that you need so many different skill sets. So essentially, at the end of the day, it costs a lot of money to make a film. And sure, maybe that's props and sets and locations, but mostly it's people's time, and it's the time of very specialized people who do a lot of very different specialized jobs. So trying to spend, say, 5 million, which is the cost of a low budget film, just to set expectations, then parceling out that 5 million is super hard, and budgeting it and actually making it go far enough is super hard. So then when you imagine scaling that down through 1 million, quarter million, which is kind of where we are, down to people who are trying to do everything on their own or on a shoestring. You essentially have to find ways to either get people to do it for free, or usually like learn how to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So we were at this really interesting budget point where we did hire a whole load of really amazing people with really amazing skill sets. And like Marianna says, we also had to compromise on or find creative ways to get special visual effects, the special effects, all of the things that came together to make our film what it is.
Well, and it's a long process. Sorry.
No, go right ahead.
I was going to say it's quite a long process. If you aren't able to get as many people as you would normally do, for example, for visual effects. So we had 3 people working on visual effects in different countries because we couldn't afford them to have them here, essentially. But on a bigger budget film, that you might have 25 people working on visual effects, and therefore your visual effects can take 2 to 3 months to make on a scale that we had. Whereas for us, it was more of a 7 months process, going back and forth between the people.
Oh, wow.
So, it's fascinating, and it's great fun and frustrating at the same time.
Well, I have to say, like, people always ask me, like, well, you didn't like the end product necessarily. I said, well, it was from a martial artist standpoint. I said, that's the thing. I said, now the one that I was in, like part of, like, the movie itself was really funny. It was, you got out of it exactly what you thought it was going to be. Their expectations were set really well. Just for me, I was like, I would have done something different, but the movie itself was like really funny. But the people I got to, so people always ask me, like, oh, it wasn't a great experience. I said, I didn't say that. I said, I just would have done something different. I would have picked different shots, which I helped to do. I said, but at the end of the day, it was their movie. I said, I was only there, to help fulfill their vision, a lot like an editor, right? In terms of a book. And the people, though, that I got to work with, I'm glad you mentioned that. There were just so many different people. I did not know that there were that many people that went into doing even like a small indie film, and just to see their, the type of production that they did, the different skills that they did, like you said, Zoe, bring to the table. I mean, it really opened my eyes to, what the film industry actually does and how much work really goes into the films that I enjoy. And it really gave me a greater appreciation for film and television just in general. So I think that's really
and I think it's one of the few industries that you really have to work as a team. There are so many different skills and so many different facets to filmmaking that you kind of have to all pull in one direction and kind of work together, which is the beauty of it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's always good too, when you have, a good director and producers, who are helping to lead that charge. That was the thing I always liked, to hear from different people in the film community where I'm from in Michigan. And, like a lot of people, like the people I did the film with, like they really did a lot of films and a lot of people worked with them, and that experience was really great. But it was really nice, to kind of get that leadership, and to kind of see that, oh, it is a team. Because I always thought it was kind of, especially with, production and post-production, I always just assumed that the team was over here and then everybody else just did their own thing later. I just didn't realize that's not it. That, at least that wasn't my experience. It was literally a team effort from start to finish. And to me, that made it so much cooler.
Yeah, everything's connected and everyone is super important, doing their own roles for sure.
Became really good friends with our sound effects guy. He was absolutely, the things he did, speaking of budget, the things he did and was able to do, just he went back to like some of the old school types of sound effects and things from the old school like kung fu serials and stuff that used to be on Saturday mornings. And yeah, he was really cool. I learned a lot from him. I was like, oh, this is very interesting to see how you do this. I just assumed he was doing everything with computer, but there were some things he's like, this warehouse is a nightmare for sound. So he went and edited some stuff later. And I just assumed he was doing something from a website. And he's like, had like a gong or something. He just has some weird stuff. And yeah, it really made me think, oh, wow, this is very, very interesting. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, it's incredible how much of film is kind of fake. I mean, we know it's not real, right?
Yeah.
But you do imagine, especially now we can all film with our phones and
you're totally
capture that. But actually, even things like you can have it where there's this whole area that I think you're talking about called Foley, and you have a Foley artist where it's their job to record separate sound effects to then edit the film. But you could even have someone walking down a corridor and then have someone record separate footsteps
Yeah.
slowly afterwards and edit them in. And I think that's kind of insane when you think about it.
Yeah.
That's what you see. And that's what makes the experience and what makes films so engaging, is this attention to detail of all these tiny pieces put together.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Magic.
Yeah, I got stuck on a documentary a while back where they were doing that. I was just like, I followed this lady on TikTok that does that too, and it's just so cool to see the different things she does. And yeah, it's really neat. Yeah, it's interesting to see how much, time and energy and just the cool ideas that are involved. It's not just, I think people still think today it's all computers, and I think there's just a lot of time and effort, like you both were saying, that really goes into it. And I think it's, that's why I try to explain to people. They're like, oh, I'm not gonna pay $4.99 for an indie book. I'm like, I've been working 14 years on mine. I'm like, $5 doesn't seem like that much, to buy 14 years of somebody's time, and I think the same thing with movies, and my buddy and I, we love going to the movies, it's a great experience. And I'm like, well, $20 is $20, I'm like, the last couple we went to see were just absolutely incredible. And, we had a great time. And film for me has always been a big thing. My grandfather used to take me to movies, like that was our thing. And we used to watch movies. So like sci-fi in particular was a big one for me. So when I see movies like yours, I know that he would really enjoy where the genre has gone today. And that's where we would be, we would be going to see your movie, or, getting the DVD or something like that and watching the movie together with some popcorn. So yeah, it's definitely always been a medium that I've loved. And, it's nice to see, great movies like yours coming out and, adding to the genre. So.
One of the things I love about Breaking Infinity is that we've combined, because there's such a rich history of sci-fi and sci-fi movies, and because I suppose one of the things that was always cool about sci-fi, and is cool going back to watch old sci-fi movies, is they were looking forward, but in their own time. And you get this kind of like aesthetic of the future and what the future looks like. Whereas obviously we've gone through the actual time of all these films are like, oh, it's so far in the future. But yet you kind of combine this modernization and updating with this aesthetic from classic sci-fi. And that's just one of the things I love so much about our film, that it's obviously made today, and projecting into the future from today. But there's also all these nods to sci-fi of the past, right? It feels like a continuum of an aesthetic that's on a continuum. It's really cool.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, that's awesome. Well, speaking of the film, we'll go with that second question there. So for our audience, because I've seen the trailer way too many times at this point, but what is your upcoming film Breaking Infinity about, and how did you come up with this premiere and premise?
Right, great question. So for us, I'm the producer of the film, I'm a producer of the film and one of the actors in the film. And Marianna is the director of the film and also one of the producers. And we got together to make a feature film project. That was our goal. We previously worked together on short films, starting from back in 2016 when we made our first short film together. So we actually went out to look for scripts from other writers. So the script was written by an LA-based writer called David Trotty. But when we read the script, we loved it. And so the premise of the film is that a scientist wakes up in a hospital and he can't remember how he got there. He's also seeing kind of strange anomalies in what's going on in his reality. He kind of jumps between being very injured and then not so injured, and the doctor's having none of it in terms of what's going on. And the film is the journey of him finding out what's happened, which is that he's invented a time machine and gone into his own time machine, while his mind has kind of become unstuck from time. So he's jumping around. Oh, wow. So we saw in the trailer this kind of like, he goes to this kind of ancient past with this old man, and then he also goes to the future and goes back through recent past that making the time machine. So he's got to kind of piece it all together while he's experiencing time out of sequence.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. I did like the old man coming in. I was like, as a writer, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like, and that was a very interesting piece, and I thought that that was done really well in the trailer. It really got me wondering. I showed it to my friend. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, I need to know what's going on here and like who this person is and this and that. As a writer, it's like horrible. Like now it's like everything's a mystery and it must be solved. So that was done really well in my opinion. But I was just curious,
Yeah.
like when it comes to bringing, David's script to life, what sort of challenges did you find, in terms of bringing that script onto the big screen, because as a writer, I know that there's certain things we do, in the text itself that help to make it feel real. But, what were some challenges that maybe you faced trying to get that to appear on screen instead?
Gosh, I mean, where do I start?
The hard one.
The script itself was pretty solid by the time we got it.
Mm.
There were just a tiny rewrites we needed to do in order to be able to shoot it. But it was in a really, really good place to start off with. And really, the hardest thing is always time pressure, right? Because you're on such a low budget. And actually, most of the films, no matter what the budget is, you're always out of time.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one thing that you're always fighting for. So scheduling and time were real issues. The locations were really, really crucial. It was really important to distinguish where Liam is in his timeline, and locations were part of the story, part of that storytelling, so to speak. So we shot at 3 different locations. We shot at a location in Suffolk called Hash House, which is this old jet engine. What is it, Zoe? Factory? What is it?
So it's a disused airfield.
So
Cool.
Beautiful building that we shot in. It's so it looks like a tunnel. We called it our time tunnel,
Oh,
but
that's
it's
cool.
essentially it's this round building that they use for testing jet engines.
Wow.
So it's absolutely humongous. And the idea is, I guess you would take the engine in and then run it and see if it's working or
that's
not.
exactly what I used to do. Yeah, that's precisely what I used to do with the engine. And the moment I walked in, I was like, okay, that's the time travel machine. That's what
Cool.
it was really, really cool. And it was just so spacious and so military. It had the feel of defense and military, secrecy and all that we needed for the film, really. The second location was at Discovery Park in Kent. And it was the hospital room, which looks really, really cool on camera, but actually was a real pain to shoot at because it was made from glass.
Oh,
so
wow.
no matter where you were, there were reflections everywhere.
Yeah.
To hide the crew, and it was really challenging for the sound for the boom operator to hide himself in a glass room with one bed in it, and that's it. So that was a real challenge, and a good fun in editing, I would say. We'd be like, oh, look, there's this person. Let's try and see if you can find another shot. That kind of a thing. So that was a real challenge. And then we shot, the last location was in Snowdonia, which is just amazing. The views are just stunning. And we had 2 different locations there. We had one sort of in between the mountains in a valley, which was great. And then we also shot at the top of the mountain, which was extremely challenging because we just couldn't carry, we didn't have enough people, we didn't have enough money. So we couldn't carry anything up there. So we didn't have any generators there, nothing. We kind of shot. I didn't have a director's monitor, so everything, I was just looking at acting as you would in the old days, I suppose, just looking at a person hooping that we catch these little moments on camera. And hoping that everything is in focus whilst filming, because there was no way of us checking it at the time.
Wow.
So that was quite challenging, and we had to carry the bed up the mountain just to get these amazing shots. So yeah, those were the kind of main challenges, really, that we kind of faced.
I think the other thing that's really interesting, particularly because I know you're an author, Daniel, and I know you talk to a lot of authors. And one of the things is that in a novel, everything is free. You can write your novel set on a spaceship, you can write it set in a 2-bed house, but it costs the same.
Yeah.
challenge with film is that a lot of the things that make a film or a book interesting in terms of exciting locations or explosions or car chases or aeroplane or whatever these things are super expensive to film. So there's a real art to screenwriting that you don't have in the same way with other forms of fiction. Writing to a budget is extremely challenging. And that's one of the things where our writer, David, he has a lot of experience working in TV. And he's also been a producer on similar like low budget films. So he really understood like what was possible. And I think the script was kind of pushing the boundaries of what was achievable on the budget. But it was, we've made it, so it was achievable. But one of the things that he wrote into the script that we did not manage to achieve was the mountain scene was actually originally written as a stone circle scene.
Oh, that's cool.
Stonehenge, or there's actually quite a few of these stone circle locations around the UK. We did actually go on a location hunt, and we went and looked at them and tried to find out like which ones you could physically get the right shots in, and then how you would hire them. And it turns out hiring a stone circle to shoot at is very expensive.
Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah.
So you'll notice, like in the film, there's something where I think we had to change like something that said stone circle to be say stones. In these stones in this mountain valley that we're in.
Anything that looked ancient would have done basically.
Yeah.
But also, even with the stone circles, even though there are quite a few here, and we've seen quite a few, some of them just weren't cinematic enough. When you look at it and just think, actually, on camera, this just is not going to look amazing. So we kind of have to weigh up what's worth doing, what's going to look more cinematic, and how we can tell the story that's written, but without the location itself.
Yeah.
And there was one, wasn't there, where if you imagined kind of shooting the camera in any direction, there was like a road in this direction, and there was like a pub in this direction. Like, no, this is supposed to be like ancient. We can't have these things in the background, right? So
right. But again, with a bigger budget, people would probably say, "Oh well, we can in a post we can get rid of all of this." But we were like, "Okay, well, this is going to eat a lot of our visual effects budget just to cover the road with something," or I can't remember the right term for it. So yeah, it's mountain. It was, and it was worth it.
It looks really good though. Particularly like when when they first go there in the trailer, he's popping up and then turns and sees the older man. That shot to me really piqued my interest. Because I felt like, this is meant to be ancient, like I felt like that was a good change. It really hit home. I felt like that. I was like, okay, that to me was a really good location. So I was interested in that location really in particular, but the other two sound really cool as well. They look really good on film. To me, it seems like the hospital room would be a nightmare. Personally, just with the reflecting and stuff, I know I've had to deal with that in the past myself, school projects and stuff. But yeah, it turned out really well. It looks really good. Everything to me really fit the what you were trying to do, in terms of story. Like the writer in me was like, ooh, that was a really cool place with the warehouse. You could immediately feel it felt like the right location, didn't just look like the right location, if that makes sense. So really well.
We did have a very talented production design team who kind of made it look amazing, and like the facility it needed to look.
And the costume designer as well, right? So the old man's costume, and the thing is about costumes. So I actually learned about this from one of my friends who is very involved in the LARP community.
Oh, cool.
And he sent me this amazing article about how we think an outfit is just like a dress or a shirt and some trousers, and how that doesn't look realistic, because if you think about how we dress ourselves, all about layers. Like you're wearing a t-shirt and then a jumper, and I'm wearing a t-shirt and then a jumper, and then maybe you have a scarf, or So actually the layering, ever since I read this article, I always noticed the layering of costumes. And actually the old man costume is such a good case in point of it's such a detailed costume, which is what then gives this amazing impression of him being from another time.
Right. And it
Although
has to
the
tell a
best,
story.
yeah, exactly. And the best thing about his costume is that he has this stick, which
Yeah,
super jealous of, that like Martin, who played the old man, just had this amazing stick. It's so cool, just so cool.
Yeah, it is I teach history, so it is interesting, when you do mention layers. I have seen, there's this one guy on Instagram who they actually, that's what they do, is they make LARPing clothes. But they try to make them authentic and things like that. But they do all these Instagram videos and these TikToks on, how to put your outfit together. And it's interesting that you mentioned that. I never connected that. They do a really good job, showing the different layers and things like that, particularly because, of, the types of fabric and things like that, the types of materials that they use. Yeah, that's interesting. I never considered that before. That's a cool little trivia piece there. That's really neat.
Yeah. But everything that's in a film helps to tell story, right? Whether it's a prop or it doesn't really matter what it is, but everything, even the camera movements, everything just helps to tell the story and the emotion.
Yeah. Well, I saw one the other day. It was so interesting. Like, I always reference like A Knight's Tale, with Heath Ledger and so many great actors and actresses. Love that movie. But they had some interesting. They mentioned angles. They had some great angles that I think were a little bit more modern day, and they used different music and things, but there was a good balance. I was watching one TV show the other day. I'm trying to think what it was now, but it was meant to be like 13th century, and whatever reason they used some very interesting what I call more like sci-fi battle angles, and it completely threw me out of the show, threw me out of the story. I was like really hung up. Why would you do that there? It was just, my friend and I got to talking about, it was a very interesting decision making. So I got kind of held up, so I haven't gone back to it. It was like episode one sort of thing. But yeah, the angles for me definitely are important. If it doesn't fit the genre or the feel of the time period, yeah, it definitely can. It's almost like, there's different things you're reading in a book, right? And all of a sudden the author does something, it throws you out completely. So yeah, the angles for me in a movie or TV show sometimes do that, depending on the time period in particular. It's interesting that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Well, you guys talked a little bit about characters, so I'm really interested in who your favorite character is in the film, and maybe why that was.
Well, I can't possibly choose.
That's fair.
Sorry. For me, all of them are amazing. The beautiful thing I think about the film is that each character has its own arc. They all have their own arc and they all have their own story that are good to find out. I'm talking about the main characters, obviously, not all the characters. So I think that's the beauty of it, that every single character, a main character that you see on screen, has their own story that is told throughout the film. But I can't choose.
Great answer. That means it's really good, right? If you have to pick just one and you don't like the other characters, it probably means something there. I think that, yeah, that's a really good answer. I didn't consider that. But how about you, Zoe? Do you have one, or would you say the same thing?
Well, I think that the protagonist of the film is Liam, the scientist, and actually, I think he's one of the most uninteresting characters.
Interesting.
For me, the role of Liam in the film is that as the audience, you're imagining yourself as Liam.
Oh.
So the more interesting characters are almost like the characters that Liam interacts with. So the first person he meets is a doctor. And there's this question of, they seem to work in the same building? Have they met before? She's very keen to not give him information that could impair him regaining his memories, right? She's very keen to not implant false memories. So he's got so little information from her. And obviously she's in this authority position. So there's this kind of like, well, who is this woman? Do I trust her? Do I not trust her? Then he meets someone who's extremely friendly, who is his lab assistant, who's like, oh, mate, And then you've obviously got this kind of like, whoa. So are we best friends? But now I don't remember you. And ooh. And then there's Carter, who is the head of the science facility, who right from the start is antagonistic, and actually you've got this, okay, you're clearly the bad guy, but actually you want the same thing that I want, so we have to work together. And then to like top it all off, you've got this old man who's just appeared out of nowhere, or rather you've appeared out of nowhere into his space.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, for me, that's how I see the film. Is like, it's all about seeing everything through Liam's eyes. And I think, like Marianna says, all of the characters, they're all very different, and they all show this different facet of this experience that Liam's having.
Oh wow, that's a great explanation for both of you. That makes it just that much more interesting to me. I always call those types of characters like Liam, when they have those experiences, like catalyst characters. I think of Owen Wilson in Midnight in Paris. Like, Owen's great, don't get me wrong, but the other actors that played, like the one guy that played Vincent Van Gogh, for instance, I thought just hit it through the roof. And to me, it was like I just wanted to go with Owen to see these other characters. And his character was a great character and everything, don't get me wrong, but everybody else, really, his character was the catalyst that you saw all these other different characters and the things that they were going through, and it really added to the story. So that's really cool to me. That sounds really interesting. that really excites me as a writer, that because we just discussed this, like I said, author and I yesterday, of how do we do that more in a book. It's hard for us, from that POV, because we need that main character Liam. Like, we're almost limited, right, in what we're able to do in our medium. So to me, like, you being able to do that and show that on film, and it's almost like you're able to write in a different way, than we are, or to, portray that character in a different way. And it makes us very jealous, because we'd like to be able to do more things like that with main characters, but, we're limited with our craft at times. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I also think the key is that all the characters people can relate to. They're all familiar to a certain extent. We all know a Carter in our life. We all know Garrett in our life. All those other characters.
Yeah.
We all know, so they're also familiar characters, and I think that's an important thing that people can relate to. If they can't relate to Liam, they'll be able to relate to Emma, or they'll be able to relate to Carter, or whoever else is in the film. I think that's also really important.
Yeah. We just talked about that with like some of the old, like, Flash Gordon, me and Patrice Fitzgerald. We talked about that, like some of the older sci-fi villains. We're like, yeah, it's great that they're evil, but like, why? Like, would they suffer? You know what I mean? Like, there was just like decades of, here's your villain, they're really evil, goodbye. And like I think what made Darth Vader so interesting, or like the evil queen from Snow White and the Huntsman, is that you find out that her heart was broken, and that's why she turns to this dark magic. And it just, and Darth Vader, right? Like, he's trying to save, Padme and, his kids, his twins. And, I then you can relate to that, and then you could see, right? I think it does make them more relatable, because you're like, oh, I might want to do that for my loved one. Like, I can relate to that, like, I have a wife and son on the way, and, like, would I turn to the dark side to save them? I don't know, like, I don't judge Darth Vader, now as a, future father in the next couple of weeks, that I used to as, as a younger man by myself. So I definitely think, relatability, we talk about that a lot on here. And I talk a lot about that with, all sorts of different writers and different mediums. And I think, yeah, all your characters need to be relatable. Otherwise, you might as well just write them out. So, we talk about that a lot.
Relatable and human, right? There has to be an aspect of humanity to them.
Yeah. And I think that's hard sometimes, right? With like, for sci-fi, because sometimes all your characters aren't human, and still, but they still need, like, I always think of Farscape. I love that, a show. And you still have to, I was just rewatching one of the first episodes for the second show that they did for Sci-Fi. And it was interesting to see some of the aliens, but they do things like Chewbacca, right, acts in a very human way that we can relate to. He loves his best friend's kids, and I think I agree with you. It's interesting, right? Even in sci-fi or something like that, you still need to think like, okay, even my alien or whoever, like, still needs to have those human characteristics so that we can relate to, because your reader is human, or your viewer is still human. So I think it adds an interesting context to it.
Yeah, science fiction's particularly interesting for this, right? Because you want to create concepts that are alien.
Yeah.
And yet they have to be relatable. So it's actually like, how do you make this alien while still retaining aspects of humanity? And that gives you the opportunity to do, I guess, what Marianna was just saying about our film, of splitting out the parts of humanity, right?
Oh yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Someone who, I mean, if you look at original, I'm a bit of a Star Trek fan, so if you look at like the original series, this idea that you've got heart from Jim Kirk, and you've got logic from Mr. Spock, and then you've got friendship from McCoy, and this kind of like different aspects of humanity, and you know what they're going to do because you know what they're portraying and what they're adding to the story.
Yeah. Oh, that's super cool. Oh, that's awesome. Well, that's a great answer. Yeah, you got me really thinking about characters' personality, relatability now. So this is why I interview people, because the writer in me, I always get something out of people's answers, and ends up really adding to what I do later. And it's nice to talk to other creators, because it's like teachers. Like, I like to talk to other history teachers because that's what we do. And in everyday life, sometimes it's hard to to talk to different people, and you're like, oh, I got this really cool idea, or maybe you two, right? Or like, oh, this is a really cool angle, or maybe this is the way, we could show this character and this motivation on film, and I think, talking to people in your craft, it's a lot different than talking to people outside of, because they're just like, oh, cool, you solved that little problem you were having. You're like, no, it was actually a really big deal, and not everything, is able to be situated now. But yeah, it's interesting. Well, cool. So we're wrapping up on time a little bit, but I definitely want to get to these last two. So we kind of covered quite a few of the questions already, but this one, and for me, is a really big one, like I said, as a creator. But what is it about filmmaking or this industry that inspires you two the most from project to project?
Well, for me, it's a story, really. I just want to tell stories, and it needs to be a story, like we already, I guess, said, that has characters that we can relate to. That's really where I come from.
I love the fact that we're both answering questions here, because Marianna's such a grown-up and I'm like a 5-year-old. So I like my 5-year-old answer, which is I'm predominantly an actor, and I get involved in making films so that I can act in them. And for me, acting is just like really well-funded LARP. So the whole experience is you get to have a character, you get to play different characters, you get to live other lives. Or it's like playing dress up and make believe when you're a child, right? So one day you can be a doctor, the next day you can be like a mystic, you can be an alien, you can be have all of these different experiences that you wouldn't get to have in your own life. And I suppose for me, like, as a kind of sci-fi fantasy fan, that's where being involved in those kind of projects, I think you have the largest scope for experiencing something really different and changing the way you see it yourself. So one of the things, talking about characters being relatable, this is even more true if you're an actor, because people have lots of different theories of acting, but I think that essentially you're trying to convey a truthful human experience in whatever it is that you're doing. And that's the ultimate goal of acting. And there's different ways of getting there. But starting from that point of view, that means you're kind of trying to like live in the moment, or live in the story of what's going on. I've totally lost my train of thought now. I'm so excited.
I don't know, but I was excited by your answer.
I was like, that's a really good answer.
I think ultimately we want to entertain people.
Yeah.
I think that's where we ultimately come from, right? We want to tell stories and entertain people. And for me, it's through directing, just because I just love working with people. And in directing, you kind of get to tap into your creative side, but also your people management side, which is really lovely to have a combination of both. But I think as an ultimate picture, we want to entertain people. We want to make films that people will either laugh at or cry at, or, you know, whatever emotion they may experience, but that they will connect with. And be entertained for an hour and a half, 2 hours in a cinema or at home or wherever it may be. I think that's really the ultimate goal, for me, for sure. And I think for you, Zoe, probably as a producer as well.
Well, what Marianna's really good at doing is holding this vision in her head of the overall project, right? Because we talked about how complex film is, different parts there are, and how actually you have to not just have all those different parts being amazing, but you have to put them together in the right way. Right outcome. You can actually have loads of amazing individual shots, but unless they come together when they're edited, you won't have a great film. And you'll have the kind of film you were talking about earlier, where the audience are constantly thrown out of it going, well, why has that just happened? Or why is that like that? Or why is that there? So what I think Marianna does amazingly is not just holding this vision, but then tying all the details and bringing all the details together and all the people together to produce this into a final product. And I have to say that I feel as a producer, I go, oh, let's make a film. That would be really neat. Then I know that it's Marianna who's going to pull all these details together and turn it into, because you can read a script and you can get an idea. You know, we've all got imagination, get an idea from reading a script, but translating that into a film is really hard. Is really, really hard. So I suppose, again, I'm a little bit like, this will be neat. This would be neat if it's a film. And then, you know, be neat if I get to like put on a white coat and pretend to be a doctor for a bit. And then, boom, here we are. We've got a film. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. Very kind words.
Yeah, that was a great answer by both of you. Yeah, I had not thought of that. I've had that problem recently with a story where I'm like, okay, you don't go here. I'm like, this scene goes here. And I think that was ultimately what paused me for about a year, because I'm like, I know I have great scenes, but I wasn't able to put them together. And, you know, I had to cut and paste a lot of things. And just recently, all the puzzle pieces started to kind of sift and fit. And I'm like, okay, this makes more of a continuum. So I definitely know that feeling. It's hard to do in a book by yourself. You having to do it from your
I have huge respect for writers. I couldn't write. It's a really hard craft. So I have huge respect. But also, I think the beauty is when you're making a film, you know, no matter what the script is, Zoe and I would, for example, before we even start shooting, we will work through it. We will talk through it in great detail as to what kind of works, what doesn't work. Sometimes I'll read a script and I go like, actually, this scene and this scene don't quite link for me. Or Zoe might do the same with hers and go, actually, from an acting point of view, this doesn't quite make sense, you know, and then we discuss it and we come up with a solution that we think works. So it's all about working together and certainly not being proud of doing something wrong, because nobody's perfect, right? And we're here to make one thing together and support each other and create something magical. So you kind of have to take other people's opinions on board and whatnot, because they're the experts. You're hiring them because they're the experts. So you have to take their opinion on board, really. And I think that's the beauty of filmmaking, where everybody just chips in and it's everybody's creation. I couldn't make a film on my own. You know, there is no way I could ever make a film on my own with a camera, with actors. It just doesn't work like that. You need other people there to help you. And I think that's brilliant. You know, I love it.
Yeah, I think, again, it just comes back to that teamwork mentality, right? Like, which I think is what, as a writer, why I like film so much, because, you know, and like which is why I do this, because I talk to different writers, and you know, I'd love to have a co-author sometime. You know, I wrote a couple of screenplays back in the day. You know, I'd like to do that again, and even just do, you know, some little stuff around here. But just to work with other people again. And that was the one thing I missed about the movie, was like the crew would be like, hey, we're going to go here and do this, or we're going to be here and filming this, or hey, we need to go and discuss, you know, how, you know, this scene works out. Like, I really missed the camaraderie that came with it. It was really fun to, for like 3.5 months, to get in there with people. And I kind of miss that with the post-production, because like, you both were saying earlier, that's, was kind of a separate thing. And that's really where for them, like more length of time, was, and energy was put into it, I feel like. But I didn't do that, I wasn't part of that. So I think, as a writer, I'm like, it gets really lonely down here in the cave, and this is where I do my thing, but for film, I get so jealous that, the last couple we went, we just, stayed for the end credits, just to really see how many people, were really, involved. And now it's kind of cool because I know some people, who are in some of these post-production companies, and have done the art or, the costuming or something like that. So it's kind of cool to have social media friends, that you see, you're like, oh, that's, so-and-so's company. So it gets really cool, but kind of jealous as a writer, that you guys get to work together, on
We
this.
do, although in post-production, you're not really working with any actors anymore or anybody
Yeah,
else. There's a big misconception, I think, in filmmaking, where people think what you film is what you're going to have in a film. And yes, it's true, obviously. But actually, the story is made in editing, because when you edit film according to the script, sometimes it just doesn't work for whatever reason. It makes sense in your head, it makes sense in paper and everything else. But once you then see it and you're like, oh, actually, so if we swap these two scenes, that might feel better or quicker or whatever it may be. So a lot of storytelling actually happens in post-production, in editing. For me, for sure. And I think other directors would agree with that, because that's where you get to play. And that's where you also find out what's missing. What do we not have? What did we not hit? It didn't happen in our film, luckily, because we just didn't have to go and reshoot. But it certainly happens a lot in TV, for example. When I do TV, sometimes they go like, oh, okay, this is great, but actually we're missing that one bit. Let's just go and shoot that scene now. Somebody will write it and we'll go and shoot it. So it's really where the magic happens. Everything's in post-production. But that's not to say, obviously, that filming isn't important or any other part. Everything is important. And you have to be as prepared as you possibly can in order to shoot quickly, efficiently, and get what you actually want. But really, the storytelling, that's all post-production to me.
Which is also, it's always interesting to see different directors, talk about, for me as a writer, to talk about that, and producers talk about, we took this scene out because it didn't work, or, I love watching one, like, like the movie and then seeing those scenes, and, but really I like hearing, like your take, like, we took this out because of this reason, or we changed this because of this. As a storyteller, to me, that just, it's more interesting. Even sometimes then, depending on what the scene you cut out was, it's more interesting to me that you cut it out and why you cut it out to make that better story.
But sometimes it's not cutting out. So, for example, in Breaking Infinity, we have montage sequences, and they were amazing on paper. When we read it, they were amazing. But when I saw it, I was like, actually, I think we can make it even better. We can just do this and this and this to make it more rich and, make it a lot better and have a lot more impact to what we're seeing. So those things also, happen. It's not necessarily cutting it out or changing things, adding to it as well with through form of editing.
Yeah. Well, that's really neat. Got me thinking a lot here today. That's very interesting. Well, we'll go with that last one. When can we expect the release date of Breaking Infinity, and where will our audience be able to watch the movie?
So we're still at the end of the I guess third phase of the film. I feel like we had pre-production of setting everything up to shoot. You've got production, which is actually getting on set and filming, which is the part everyone thinks of as making the. Then we've got post-production, which we're just talking about is such a long process. And now I feel we're at the start of getting the film out there, of marketing the film and making sure people know about the film, eventually getting it into the places where people can watch it. But what we expect to happen.
Don't worry, our audience is used to it. Don't worry, because all the authors, it's just like they're just used to showing up whenever it's time. So,
well, we're targeting a release in May.
Oh, cool.
At which point the film will be available on all of the online platforms that we can get onto. So hopefully it will not just be like you can only watch it on Amazon or you could only watch it on Apple. We're going to get it onto as many different online platforms as we can. And there will all
in the UK.
Yes, we could have different release dates in different countries. That's true, which is a
Oh yeah, that's true.
complex factor about how
Yeah,
online
yeah,
that you don't actually, you'd think you put it online and then it's available everywhere, but it
yeah.
doesn't. So yeah, this is the UK, and then there'll be limited cinema releases as well. And then, yeah, possibly we'll try and time it similarly in the US. But we would definitely love to keep you updated so that you can keep the people watching updated, because we are super keen for everyone to watch this film. And it is a film for, you know, real sci-fi aficionados. It's not just like sci-fi's kind of got quite trendy now recently. And I think a lot of people like flicking through going, yeah, I'll watch a bit of sci-fi. From my perspective, this is not really like an entry-level sci-fi film. This is like for people who want to think when they watch a film, and they want to be engaged in that kind of like working out what is going on. So yeah, so I'm very keen that people exactly like the people listening to this podcast get to hear about it and get to watch it.
That's cool. Well, we're gonna do we talked about doing a release party for it once we're able to see it. So we're trying to do quite a few things. I say this, and then my poor best friend's my tech guy, and then he has to figure. I come up with the idea, and he has to figure out all the
how to do it.
So yeah, that's why I buy him a lot of books. Yeah, and fun things, fun geek things, and send to him. But yeah, so we had talked about doing, you know, like once, you know, it had released, you know, and then particularly, you know, once we were to get it online, to do like a release party, kind of leading up to that, and you know, trying to do some promotional things and stuff like that for you guys. We were talking about, you know, trying to do some giveaways and things like that. We got like mugs and different things like that for the podcast, merchandise and stuff. So if you guys have anything you want to send us or whatever, we can just put it in the bundle or whatever. Yeah, so we're really hoping, you know, to get the views up and stuff like that. We got a pretty big following in the UK, so we're hoping, you know, that helps as well. But yeah, if there's anything else, you know, that, you know, I can do or we can do, we have a lot of things that he has said that I can do and that are possible. We have a lot of things kind of locked and loaded for the new year. So we're really hoping that some of the groundwork that we've done really helps us with some traction on some different media outlets. And we have some different advertising and things going up as well. So we're really hoping to rev up from now, which is ironically from now before, you know, the movie will be released. So yeah, just let us know, and you know, we'll keep each other updated, and we'll help, you know, get the word out any way we can. And if there's anything else we can do, you know, in the meantime or after, you know, just let us know. You know, we'd love to have you guys back. I have a couple other guests, you know, that would love to come on, you know, and ask you guys some questions. But yeah, if you want to bring any actors or, you know, special effects, send anybody my way. I work mostly either listeners or referrals. So yeah, if they, you know, love fantasy, sci-fi, or horror, you know, send them my way, and you know, we'd be more than happy to get you guys on, and we'll talk about whatever projects you have worked on in the past, or this one, or new ones. But yeah, if there's anything we can do at all, just let me know, and be more than happy to help you out.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
I guess the other milestone coming up, because obviously you've mentioned that you watched the trailer already.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we'll be having the public release of the trailer in January.
Oh, cool.
It's like the first time the film or parts of the film will be out there for people to watch. So that's quite exciting. And obviously, if anyone wants to ask us questions, we love answering questions about the film. And we've been sharing some snippets of other interviews that we've done with the cast on our social media. And our social media is all at Breaking Infinity, except that I think one of them that was too long for. So one of them is at Breaking Infinite, because that was as much as was allowed.
That's the Twitter one.
Been there.
Is that Twitter? Is that Twitter? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think Breaking Infinity is at Breaking Infinity Film. Is it at Breaking Infinity? How do I see this?
So our website, this is probably the easiest, is to go to our website, which is Breaking Infinity Film. And then there'll be links on there to all of the social media, but also just searching we're the only Breaking Infinity. Like if you search.
We'll actually, sorry, I failed to mention it before I get recorded. We'll actually be putting all of those sites and anything that you guys have.
Is it, can I do that? Is it down there?
It'll be in the description. So and most people have been with us for a while, so they know that, YouTube is in the description. So you can actually click on those links just to remind our audience, or if you're new, anywhere where this video or audio can be found, you can always do that for any of our authors, artists, directors, producers, things like that. So everything's in the description. Makes it nice and easy for people, just one click away from seeing some really good material. But we'll put all that in there for you, so no big deal there. I definitely know the feeling though, because I got cut off on quite a few things. People are always like, why are you like an acronym on Twitter? I'm like, well, the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast is too long of a handle for Twitter, so I had to do that on a few things, and sometimes it's hard for people to find me because of that. So I definitely know that feeling. But cool. Well, I'm really excited. I was telling my friend I made him sign a non-disclosure agreement, and I made him watch it on my phone with me. I was like, I kept teasing him. I was like, I swear to God, I was like, if you blow this up for any of us, I was like, I'll have you in court till the time my son goes to college. But he was like, he helps me with all this stuff. He was like, this is really cool. I know he'll be really interested in watching this interview, and he's going to help me with the release party and stuff. So it'll be really fun.
Amazing. And when the trailer is out, if you would be so kind and share it, that would be amazing.
we're gonna go. We're gonna go all over with it. We're actually going to be doing what did he say? My other friend, my tech guy, he said he's got a couple of things. We're actually we're doing free parking spots on our website, on my author site. So we put everything there. So I'll be asking Beth for just a little information for both of you. That way we can give you your own. So we're doing that for everybody that's been on, who have been alumni of the podcast. So they'll actually be able to go right there. And we're actually putting that on the main page as well. So once the trailer drops, it'll actually be right down after our introduction, right on the main page. So he's already got us covered. So just send that to me, or have Beth send it to me, or whoever, and we'll get it all over. We'll plaster it anywhere we can, get a billboard in town.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Like I said, anything we can do at all, you just let me know. But we're really, my team's really excited for the movie, and we're really excited to have a little party for you guys. And maybe we were talking about maybe doing.
I want to be at that party.
I know. Well, we talked about doing a live event. We talked about, getting your, the different time zones involved in doing like a live event for it, which is, again, part of his thing, not mine. But once we have gotten those details figured out, we'll definitely do that for you guys. If you guys wanted to do one, on like a Saturday or something, for the release publicly of the trailer, we could do that too. And then also do that for, the movie as well, once it releases, and, once people can, find that in different platforms. But that's something, we can talk about in the next couple of weeks and months. And, we're more than happy to do that. Anything we can do to get more fantasy and sci-fi out there, that's our main goal. So if there's anything like that you'd be interested in, just let me know, and we'll help you out as best we can. So
that's fantastic.
Right.
Thank you so much.
More science fiction and fantasy for the world. I love it.
It's the best, so we try and do our best. But well, thank you so much, Marianna and Zoe. It was a real pleasure. Like I said, if there's anything else we can do, let me know. But other than that, we look forward to helping you any way we can. And I will be sending Beth a couple of follow-up emails. But other than that, good luck with everything. My team and I are really excited about this movie, and looks incredible and looks like an amazing product, and we're excited to watch it. So
thank you so much, and thank you for having us.
Anytime you want to come back, or bring the crew or whoever, send anybody my way. You guys are more than welcome. We love returning guests. We've had quite a few, and people always love hearing what you guys have to say, as creators. So anytime you want to come back, you just shoot me an email. Even if we want to do another one that's closer to the release date, or even right after, see how things are going, just shoot me an email and we'll get it going for you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.
No problem. Well, you two have a great rest of the day, and we will talk to you later. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.